Hello, everyone. Welcome to the rebranded Filmocracy podcast. We are joined by the usual suspects, John Fitzgerald, CEO of iGEMS, and of course, last but not least, Justin Giddings, Film Festival Mastery co-founder. It's a little bit different format. I'm now taking the lead, so I'll probably have less time for my sound effects. So you'll have to forgive me if it's a little bit.
Yes.
But I think you should
Yes.
take over, Justin, and do sound effects with your voice.
With just my face. Boop, boop, boop.
That's perfect. Yeah, I'm gonna key a button and you're gonna do that each time.
Okay. Okay. Done.
So a lot going on. We haven't recorded in a while, so there's a lot to catch up on. But probably the most notable thing that's happened recently is Sundance is over, kind of. And so there's been some interesting articles, one of which really talks about Sundance box office performance and how that has played out over the years. So I'll kick it to you, John. I know you have some hard numbers for us, and I can expand on that if we need to.
Well, I was just going to say, I did an article for The Mind a few weeks ago that broke this down, and I don't have the exact specifics yet, but I will say that in the last 5 years or so, it's gone down significantly from literally over $300 million in terms of the films acquired out of Sundance and how they do theatrically. It's gone from literally over $300 million down to 200, 100, and I think last year was less than 50 million. So the article was in IndieWire, I believe. It was pretty significant because I mean, obviously you got to throw COVID into the mix, but a lot of these movies that started years ago with the acquisition of Sex Lies and Videotape for $1.1 million that then goes out and does, I don't know what it did, over 75 million worldwide or something. That's what kicked this madness into higher gear, and it was working for a while, but not so much. I don't know, Justin. We
Yeah.
talked a little bit about the acquisitions numbers, but you go ahead and give some feedback on that, and then I'm going to throw in some harsh realities about this
Yeah.
year.
I think what's really interesting. I don't really have any good predictions about this, but I find it interesting what the Sundances and the South Bys and the Torontos seem to be becoming. We were talking about this earlier with Film Festival Master Clients, right? Like, and a- and are they even really festivals really anymore when you break down some of the numbers you're going to go through and who's getting in and then at the same time, I mean, hearing those box office numbers slowly going down, that's also really interesting of like, okay, so if they're not really a festival in the way I think a lot of people think of them, and they're not then even a marketplace for films that are going to make a ton of money, like what is the future of these like kind of large A-list festivals that don't really serve indie filmmakers, and haven't for a while, but also maybe aren't creating commercially viable films or promoting commercially viable films. So yeah, just kind of chiming in on sort of my interest on this because uh, particularly among our client base, it's like everybody wants to get into Sundance or bust, and I don't think that's. I mean, we never thought that was a thing, but now it's really like not a thing.
Well, I think it's not taking into consideration that a lot of these films that are being picked up at Sundance these days are picked up by streamers who just put it directly on the streaming platform, so there is no box office number. And we don't know how successful these things are. They're pretty hush hush about actuals like viewing statistics and stuff, and there's no real good comparison between like what is a successful streaming debut of a film?
Yeah.
Like what is $100
Yeah,
million debut of a streaming film like equivalent?
What are the metrics that have to
what are
change?
the metrics? Like that's the
Exactly.
trick, right? Because some of
Mhm.
these streamers, when Netflix got into the act years ago, and then followed by Amazon, you know, th- these guys were spending big money and they weren't taking them out into theaters. And then they started taking them out into theaters. And then you got Manchester by the Sea that had theatrical and Oscar cred, right? So it,
Mhm.
it kind of changed the game a little. But then you have something like, I did an article last week on this. I feel like there were something like 10 films in 2019 that were sold for more than $10 million, like 11 million, 13 million, tons of money. And some of them were streamers, and they weren't taking these films out theatrically. They were just trying to have an excuse to boost their user base, But then you have
Right.
a film like last year was 25 million for Coda, but that movie was a home run in every sense of the word, and it will likely get a Best Picture nomination.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really like also attribution. Like the companies that have streaming platforms like Amazon and Apple that have their own streaming platforms, are people subscribing to their service because of those films that they acquired?
Exactly,
Because when
that's
you
they're
go to
betting
the
on.
theater and you buy a ticket, like this person bought this film's, viewership. But
Right.
then
Right.
if I subscribe to this service, am I really doing it for that film, or am I doing it because they have all of these films to watch, or TV series for that matter?
Yeah, I've never been like a sports ball guy, but I went to school in Cincinnati. My wife is born and raised in Cincinnati. My entire family, extended family, are Bengals fans, and Bengals have not been good ever. And now all of a sudden they're in the Super Bowl, and like we watched the playoffs, and I like got Peacock because that was where it was the first week, and now I've got I think Paramount Plus is the CBS one. And I'm wondering like where do I fit into the metrics then? Because I'm also going to be canceling them as soon as sports ball is over. Um, Except then I realized Paramount has a lot of great titles, has a great library of movie titles. I'm like, oh well, shit, maybe I've got myself a new a new streamer to get into. So it's really
and and
it's interesting.
Cincinnati doesn't. I read that the kids aren't going to have to go to school the next day after the Super Bowl.
Oh,
That's
I'm
how big of a
sure.
deal it is in
It's a
Cincinnati.
huge deal here. It's psychotic here in my little neck of the woods. People are losing their damn minds. It's kind of weird. It's sort of refreshing, and there's like videos of people cheering and hugging. It feels like Christmas around here. It's
Mhm.
nuts. I'm excited. I don't care, and I'm excited.
I don't care either. And the game's like right down the street from us here, right? So it's like a home
Yeah,
game for the Rams.
yeah. And then the whole
I
Los
might go. I
Angeles
might go to
thing.
Disneyland. How's that?
Ooh,
Supposed to
The
be a
day to
good
yeah,
day to
go.
go to Disneyland.
counter programming. I like
That's
it.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that's smart.
So let's
Hey,
talk for a second about the acquisitions this year, just to kind of bring this full circle. So
Yeah.
so this year, I read that there were 16 acquisitions of Sundance titles prior to the festival, like a ways in advance for the most part, and then a few that sold right before the festival, and then those during that was 21. So it's a total of 37 features that were acquired out of 84. So there's not a lot left. And again, these will likely end up on streaming platforms, and more deals will certainly trickle out. But it is interesting, as you said before, Paul, that a lot of these acquisitions are made by streaming companies, and that's still the case. Most of these acquisitions were from the streamers, but there were some from, the Sony Pictures Classics and A24. I mean, the folks that are going to take these out theatrically or be doing Oscar pushes.
yeah, we'll see how it plays out. I mean, I think this is interesting also because Sundance is kind of a market in a sense, at least for domestic. And we have Berlinale and EFM coming up, and
Hmm.
I still have somewhat of a pulse on the sales agent world, and like it doesn't really mean anything to them. Like these virtual markets and people trying to like create this sort of like bidding war or like frenzy during the market is just not possible virtually. Like everybody has time. Like everybody has like their own
Hmm.
process now, and then you're not like forced into an environment where you're like, well, we're all here and we're all trying to buy movies, so we're gonna outbid each other. And usually in those situations, it's not worthwhile raising of the price of whatever the film was that was highly in competition. So yeah, it
Yeah,
sounds pretty
that's interesting. I mean, a classic tenet of good sales is creating urgency, right? Why do this now or as soon as possible? And yeah, when the only way to see it is to be there in the room, And
Mhm.
then the only way for that deal to happen is for you to secure that deal as quickly as possible after that screening through the channels that are available to you. Yeah, you'll go spend, $20,000 to get your team over there and put them up, and so you invest in the process from the company side, and the urgency of it is like somebody's got to make a deal. It's happening today, and there's more than one bidder. That's going to drive the price up, and now there's so much money and so not urgency. So it's really easy to be like, we'll write you this check for this. Take your time, think about it. Let us know if you're interested, because then you could be on Netflix or not. And
There's
you
also
can.
Well,
another wrinkle where because the streaming platforms are acquiring so much stuff and they always want all rights, worldwide rights. And before it would be like you go to the market and you sell, okay, to Germany, 4 million,
mhm.
UK, 3
You
million.
carve it up.
Like you carve it up and you make a lot more money that way. But the streamers don't want to deal with that. It's just too complicated to do individual rights for every single country. So they don't consider those films very often. And so that means the projects that are in consideration, like good enough to be considered for Netflix, for example, or Amazon, they will wait. They will wait until they get a no from one of the big streamers that are their targets. And that sort of causes a backflow where all of
Right.
the content that's not quite at that tier is waiting as everybody else eats first and decides like, okay, well, we're actually gonna cut it up because Netflix doesn't want it. So, here you go, Constantine. Here you go, like all the different international distributors. So it's a really weird environment right now.
How does a filmmaker navigate that without pissing people off? Like a true indie filmmaker. Because I can imagine being on the other side of that and hearing we're waiting to hear back from Netflix and kind of being like, yeah, that's pretty lame. I'm gonna go make deals elsewhere. Like,
It's funny, Justin. It reminds me, like talking about our first module, right, where we really
Mhm.
focus in on goals at Film Festival Mastery. Like, are you trying to parlay this feature into, your next studio feature? Are you trying to sell for the most money? What are you trying to achieve here? And I think because a lot of our audiences are comprised of kind of American independent filmmakers, I think it's worth noting that you talk about the European film market and you talk about the Berlinale and the film festival. It is interesting because a lot of those titles at Sundance were either on the radar, sold, or close to selling before the festival even started.
Right.
And it's mostly American indies, right? Then you look at Berlin, and I wrote this down too. It's interesting, right? 239 films playing in the various sections of the Berlinale. Only 24 of those are American films. Yet,
10%.
if one of your goals was to generate as much exposure as you can around the world and find some international sales, then you could consider getting a sales agent to shop the film in the European film market, have market screenings, and make sales there. There's a lot more than there's a lot more than 24 American indies in that market, right, Paul?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
essentially all of the rest of the world is independent film. That's kind of how you look at it. There's no other studios.
Yeah.
All the
Right.
studios
I'm
are
just saying, like,
LA.
if you're an American filmmaker who's planning your film festival and market strategy, right? You think of the targets and the tiers that are appropriate for your film. Not everybody's getting into Sundance and Telluride and TIFF, and so are you going to the second tier? Are you thinking about? I mean, we got clients all the time. Should I apply to Berlin? Well, let's look at the numbers at Berlin for American indies. It's not a big
Right.
number, but if one of their goals was to sell their film internationally, then that's a different approach, but it's one to consider.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of like as we were talking about Disneyland, like counter programming you can do. And it's not like you have to go domestic first and that's where you're gonna make or break your film. You can prove yourself. Like if you go to Berlinale and you sell us a few territories to different distributors because they believe in your film, like that's ammo in your pocket. Look, this film is gonna have, a release in these countries and they're at least gonna do some marketing for it. That means something, like either as validation to help another, US distributor decide like, oh, okay, this film stands out from the others. The others are
Yeah.
just waiting for Netflix to come and save the day. Unlikely. Whereas this other film, like I know other buyers have already kind of given it the stamp of approval, and maybe I will now take the chance on it. Like it's all connected.
Yeah, that's where I see an opportunity for a real entrepreneurial filmmaker is like, okay, everybody's doing the thing now where we're waiting for Netflix to say yes, just like a lot of film festival mastery clients, they're like, okay, not our clients, but this is what we teach them, right? You know, their original strategy was wait to see if Sundance lets us in. And we teach it's like that's the losing strategy because of the numbers. And
2%.
you jerk.
2%, right, Justin? I think that's what we came
Yeah,
up
I
with.
mean, tiny numbers, and then the breakdown of like, and how many of those went to people who had names, how many of those went to
Yeah.
Sundance Lab people, right? So this tiny
Alumni.
little wee subsection, and building a strategy around that's not a good idea. Whereas same thing with this market is like, if you wait for Netflix, you're going to be waiting for Netflix with everybody else. Whereas if you take that wait period that everybody else is waiting, and that's where you do all of your awesomeness and make all those relationships and sell your freaking film, you might actually be able to get ahead of what would have been your competition anyway, because the 10 titles that were going to go to Netflix, is much like Sundance. It's like kind of everybody probably knew what that was anyway. And so you've not wasted time. In fact, you've taken advantage of the lull to move your film forward. Do that, everybody. Cool.
Well,
Podcast over. We solved it. We solved it.
We solved the riddle. No, but it's an interesting point that you both made too about what do festivals mean now and what have they become? And you mentioned earlier, Justin, the idea of markets, and we talked earlier about Toronto being kind of basically a press junket for a lot of the studios, taking their fall prestige pictures into Toronto and generating some media exposure and buzz before they have their mandatory theatrical so they can qualify for Oscar consideration. But there are a lot of festivals that are still playing the discovery game, but you kind of have to know the difference between a Sundance and a Seattle and a Berlin and a Toronto. I mean, they all have slightly different agendas and different percentages of films from certain regions.
Yeah.
I think if we're talking about, how can you set yourself up for success? I think choosing what type of project is hot in the market right now, which types of films are the most successful these days. And there's an interesting research chart, I guess that's what it's called, that I found that basically shows how the popularity of genres has changed over the decades from 1910 to 2021. This is created by somebody named Bo McCready. I'm trying to give credit where credit is due. But like, obviously, Justin, if I asked you like which genres are popular now and which ones are not popular anymore, and what's the reverse for like way back in the day?
Right.
What do you
Yeah,
think?
like the horror films, genre films. I know, at least in terms of profitability, faith-based films are popular at markets, but not silent films, not sweeping epic romances. I mean, the romantic comedy is this weird beast that like dies for 5 years and then resurrects in some new form and has a year or two and then dies again and resurrects in a new, so we had the Judd Apatow period, and now that's not, the rated R romantic comedy is not a thing really anymore that I can think of. But then the Palm Springs, yeah, the one with Andy Samberg, right?
Yeah.
That was delightful and hugely popular and technically a romantic comedy, but also weird and time travel
Slightly sci-fi.
Yeah, right, exactly. So it's got the genre bent, maybe, and then like very millennial existential kind of narrative through line. Yeah. So yeah, but I'm
But what
curious,
would
do
you
you have any like
say?
things that
Yeah.
stand out on your little chart, your research chart?
Before I go to the chart, which
Mhm.
what genres would you say used to be very popular and are now no longer popular?
Well, I just say for the independent side of things, comedy has always been a tough genre for indies to crack. I mean, of course, you have, Napoleon Dynamite. You've had some hits over the years, but I think the truth is drama has been the most popular genre to play kind of the indie film festival circuit. And documentary has slowly, over the last 10 years seen this crazy hockey stick mentality, right? Where they're the hottest, buzziest titles. But I think this is where you're going, Paul. I mean, the most popular genre in terms of sales and net profits and trends. I think Eric Cohn in IndieWire wrote a great piece on it last week. Is thriller and horror. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it didn't the grand jury prize winner for the first time ever was a horror film out of Sundance this year. That's the genre.
Versus say like a Western. I would have put like depending on the right. Like
Western musical.
I've
Yeah,
written a
see each
Western
other.
script. We had a reading at the Soho House. I think it's great, frankly, but it's also weird. It's like there's a talking bullet inside of a guy's head. It's odd, but I wrote this thing or my partner and I, we wrote this thing and then we were like, well, I mean, we'll never, I don't know if we're ever going to sell this, but this is a fun exercise. But yeah, I would definitely put horror and thriller now as the most popular. And then I don't know. Yeah, that would have been B movie schlock stuff 100 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
horror
it's
thriller.
not. Yeah, it wasn't what was I'm gonna blank on this, but what was the oh my god, what was the
Jaws,
crazy hot
Star Wars.
thriller? No, the hot thriller that he's made a few films since then. Get Out, was it?
Oh yeah, Jordan. Yeah, Jordan Peele.
Wasn't
Mhm.
was that Sundance? It was definitely a festival
I
title.
thought it was Cannes, wasn't it? Didn't that? I seem to remember something, or Venice maybe.
I'm just saying it was a hot movie and Us, like some of these really hot thrillers have come out, obviously Blair Witch Project, but in the last few years, big thriller horror movies have come out and just been all the rage. And the Sundance Jury Prize this year, somebody's going to come up with.
Yeah,
What was it?
Get Out was Sundance.
There you go.
Yeah. So you guys are right. Thriller, horror, documentary, those are on the up and up, and romance and westerns and musicals, and also war movies have really
Oh, yeah,
dwindled.
I was gonna go for epics. I guess that would have fallen under that. But yeah, we're not. I watched Braveheart again like a week and a half ago.
Wow.
And I was like, A, this movie is amazing. And B, this movie would never get made. Like ever. And amazing, but also like looking at it from today's eyes. And I'm like, oh, this character, the main woman totally is the fridge. She's just there to set him up on his journey and then dies. Spoiler alert. And that's the rest of the movie is this like he keeps yearning for her. And I'm like, dude, you had like 2 scenes with her. And then you got secret married and then she was dead. Like it's, your whole thing is built around this, but like audiences bought that as sufficient motivation for this character to begin his journey and start that journey. And so it was really weird to watch it and like love the cinematography, love the acting, love the writing, weirded out by some like even 30 years ago level of awareness and wokeness and lack thereof. And yeah, it was, but yeah, we're not seeing that. We're not seeing Bravehearts get made. Like that ain't happening.
I think it would be a series on HBO now.
Yeah.
That were made today, which would kind of be awesome, I think.
Yeah.
Braveheart series. Yeah.
Braveheart series.
But what does that mean for filmmakers then? Like, is it worth, on the theme of counter programming, is it worth making a war musical Western?
To counter
And
program?
you're the only one that exists in this field, or is it better to just like go with the flow and make a horror documentary?
That's really interesting. One of the reasons why we did write the Western was it was designed to actually look into some systemic racism stuff of like early Chinese immigrants to the railroad system. And so like we have a Chinese American lead, and it's very surrealist. This guy gets shot in the head at the very beginning as like revenge for abandoning his his slave owner, essentially. And he wakes up and he's got this bullet in his head that is this profane, cursing Clint Eastwood type that talks to him. And he goes on this journey and tries to like navigate the world. Hi, daughter, go away, please. And so like we made a Western, but it's kind of weird, and it's about racism, and it's about things that it isn't like white guy shows up in town and takes out all the baddies. It's a different take, and I think that's how you're going to get the romantic comedies and the musicals and the Westerns, is when those forms are used to explore things that are going to just be more relevant to modern audiences. La La Land, I think, kind of was getting into that a little bit. They were talking about sort of the existential dread ennui of trying to be an artist and make it in a world when all your parents told you could be whatever you want to be. It's not happening. It's not working. My kids are fighting with my wife right now in the background to get out of the basement, for all of you wondering what the drama is. So yeah, I think these things can make a comeback, and all it'll take is one really, really awesome good one to get people thinking about it again. Although that didn't happen with musicals and La La Land. I was surprised we didn't see a ton more musicals coming out after that.
Yeah, there were a few, but not that. Yeah, not the Disney. Well, we had a couple this year. One might get an Oscar. Actually, there'll probably be two this year that are up for Best Picture Oscars, right?
Yeah,
Spielberg
so
and that's just Steven. That's a remake.
I need to vent for a second. So, about musicals, I just watched Encanto, and it was great. Really, really great.
So far, we're still friends.
Yeah, but but the songs now in like Disney movies and Pixar movies are so like they're like Broadway style. Like you cannot remember the lyrics and sing along. It's like they're singing their feelings, and so you can only like kind of hum along to whatever. We don't talk about Bruno. Like that's the only line I know in that movie. And there's so many other lyrics, but it's like these songs now are like, don't you remember back in the day? And I don't want to sound like that person, but back in the day, you could hear the song twice and know the lyrics to the song. It was like straightforward, and like you will always remember those songs. There's so many classic Disney songs we all remember, but like, what are the most recent songs you remember from animated films now?
Yeah, it's funny. We were having this conversation, my wife and I too. Because like Part of Your World, Little Mermaid's Part of Your World is easily one of my favorite, maybe just straight up favorite Disney song of all time. But I really liked Encanto. But I know what you're talking about. There's also like a rhythmic shift in it as well. We're not getting verse chorus bridge chorus grand ending. We're getting some, frankly, some real musicality, and not that that wasn't Alan Menken and whatnot. He's genius, but there's this push and this shift, which I think is both really, really exciting, but makes it harder, I think, for avid film watchers. Can make it harder, I think, to not exactly access it, but easily categorize it. Like what is Encanto's music style? What do you label that as? Because it's not fully anything, and it doesn't really match well with much that's come before. So I think you were right. Like the kind of a Broadway style is probably the closest that you got, but we're not on Broadway, and like many of the songs are helped by the surrealist imagery where we can just pretend all of a sudden that she can lift a mountain and we're in the whole thing. And so I see this blurring of the edges, whereas in the past, the lines were very, very clear. The gatekeepers at those lines looked a very specific way, and they sold that boundary, for quadrant. I mean, we even talk about it in quadrants and stuff, right? Like that was how you could sell it. And now it's like, well, I've got this like film, this Disney film that is it a princess? It's not a princess movie, and it's not this type of music, and it's got these types of people who don't look like all the other people, and where do we go with this, and what do we do with it, and how do we sell it? I think there's both opportunity there, and then of course there's always the uncomfortableness of change and growth and shifting that people are going to experience. And I think even filmmakers are going to feel both of those, that exhilaration and the like, I don't know what I'm supposed to make next now. What do I make now? Am I making a slasher film when I make a horror, or am I making an A24 Midsummer Witch, Lighthouse? Is Lighthouse even horror? What the hell is Lighthouse? You know what I mean? Like, amazing, but do I make that? Should I go try to make that? It's
But
I don't know, I'm
one of
very
the things
confused.
that I remember reading many times when I graduated from film school, just researching what to write, what to do. And they always say, kind of write what you know, write what you think you can figure out. Like, don't see what the trends are and then try and go write something in that
Totally.
vein. Like, at least that's my take, is you're better off, if you're writing it, to do something that or developing something in a world that you can connect with, right? You're not going to go from your low budget indie that plays a second or third tier film festival and go pitch your version of Star Wars, right? Nobody's
Right.
going to give you that budget for your second film. So I think you want to stay where you're comfortable. You want to challenge yourself, but you want to stay in an area that you think you can live in.
Yeah, it's funny. Recently, I'm just anecdote man today, apparently. So my partner and I, how much can I say? So we have been hired but not announced yet. I'll say that, to direct a feature. And it's a horror film. It's a ghost story, but the main character, a huge piece of this is like phobias and OCD and mental health. And so for us, it's really a movie about mental health that happens to have the horror elements as this exploration, how we explore this character and the narrative and the journey he goes through. And I'm seeing that a lot in horror, right? So to speak
Mhm.
to what you're saying, John, it's like sometimes filmmaker, like my partner and I, we have a lot of like the exploration of what is the meaning of life, like why are we here? What are we doing? Does death make it meaningless, or does it make it special? Like, that's kind of our philosophical bent. And so when we go make a horror movie with a ghost in it, we're coming at it with that lens. And I'm curious what filmmakers moving forward start using, maybe some of these genres, or pulling some of the tools out of the toolbox that might be connected to different films or different genres, to say things that in the past might have been an indie drama. Like, oh man, my
Mhm.
dad died and I gotta like go cross country and figure out who I am now, and while I'm carrying his ashes, and like that's how I deal with my existential fear of death. um we're not making that. It's a ghost story with an OCD guy, and we're gonna just inject into that this dramatic question of what is the meaning of life. um which is exciting. But again, like, now we're blurring the lines. I'm not making a ghost story anymore. I'm making an indie drama that happens to be with a lot of ghost in it for
Oh, the
90 minutes.
movie that won the grand jury prize this year out of Sundance, I think I said earlier, it was the first in that horror genre to win that prize. It's called Nanny.
Hmm.
And it turns out was also a Sundance Lab title. We were talking about that earlier, Justin.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's interesting. I encourage people to read Eric Cohn's article about kind of the popularity of that genre, and filmmakers too, because part of the deal, they've already got a deal. The filmmakers from that have already got a deal with Universal for their next project. So part of the deal that we can say specifically for Film Festival Mastery students is that it's about how you take this first project and parlay that into your next project, right? So part of the deal is how do I get the attention? How do I create the relationships so that I can go and make another project? And it's pretty shocking to think about how many filmmakers have come out of the festival circuit, even as hot, buzzy filmmakers that win awards, how long it takes them to get their next project made. Like, you want
Yeah.
to talk about some crazy low percentages. I mean, 2, 3, 5, sometimes 7, 8 years later. Really?
Yeah, we were at Luber Rockland Management, which is a pretty big manager, and my partner and I had come on as actors because we had done this show together. That's how we met. And we walk in and we're like, hey, okay, we're gonna be directors. We want to be writer directors. Like, we'll keep acting, of course, but like, this is what we're gonna do. And our manager was like, it's like a 10-year track. And we're like, oh, okay, sure, whatever, man. And yeah, we made great shorts and like have had a burgeoning career, but the first feature is slated at about the 10-year mark. And I'm like, oh, damn it, he was right. He was right all along.
Well, it's funny that you say that too, Jesse, because I remember talking to clients years ago about kind of the average gestation period for a project. Like, you sell a project to a studio and you're popping the champagne and thinking this is great. 8 to 10 years was the average for a very long time to get that project, especially through the studio system, because of all the notes and the VPs and the creative. It's like make a film by committee kind of thing. But yeah, so it's interesting that the numbers aren't that far off from your story.
Right? That's nuts. Because I'd
Well,
be popping.
let's switch gears now away from Justin's burgeoning film career.
Are you kidding? It's the most exciting thing ever. It's not.
But back to John, I think you wanted to talk about something Slamdance is doing, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I thought it was interesting. Obviously, as a co-founder, I keep half an eye on what's going on over there, and certainly as it's topical because it's going on right now through the 6th of February. Again, Paul, you've done a bunch of festivals. Filmocracy do 120 plus or so last year. A lot of film festivals, right? It's interesting to see what these folks are doing, and as we've discussed before, a lot of these festivals are creating membership models. And so not only can you go to Sundance now and spend $10 to buy your pass and see all the films that are available online, and slight caveat that they're not all available online, that's another story, but for $10 you can basically stream their panels and their films, and there is some geo-blocking going on, but you can check that out. But for $7.99 a month, you can also get access to those 100-ish films and join their club where you can see 40 plus movies, and then they'll add movies monthly. So again, another almost streamer entering the marketplace, right? How many times can you shell out money? I feel like, Paul, we talked about this last week. Is there a bit of a fatigue going on here?
Yeah.
Subscription fatigue, right? So I don't know. Interesting, right?
I mean, it is very affordable.
It's $7.99. So you could join it for 2 or 3 months, and then you probably see just about everything. It's. I mean, they talk about this on the thing you just had it up there. They talk about, we're not an algorithm, we're a human curation, and that's something that the three of us are all big fans of, right?
Yeah.
It's like you become a trusted programmer and curator. People trust what you bring out, and it's better to have quality in a smaller volume than to be a library play where you've got some great titles sprinkled in, but then a bunch of crap. But I'm glad you brought this up, Paul, because this is a big time, a big season for independent filmmakers, and we talked a little bit about Sundance, a little bit about Berlin, and Slamdance, but the other big one that's coming up is South by Southwest, who just announced their slate. So here's an interesting little factoid about there. So you can, for the bottom basement price of $1,675, you can buy a platinum badge, or you can buy a film badge for $1,345, or you can buy an online for $459. You have to have a badge to access all of the titles and the panels and some of the music. So interesting, right? There's $10 over here, and then over here you're really dropping some coin. And in all fairness, Slamdance is virtual. South by is going to have in-person screenings, but then they'll be available online as well. And Berlin, we talked about earlier, only the film festival films are playing live in person. They're not playing online. and the European film market is exclusively online.
What's a film lover to do? What are we gonna do?
Well, here's another interesting little tidbit. I found it interesting. You know, South by was one of the first festivals to start kind of sneaking in some TV series, right? When we all kind of went
Mhm.
into the, crossed over to the dark side, started paying attention to television. Um, but they're actually closing the festival this year with the premiere of season 3 of Atlanta.
Wow.
Wow,
Really?
that's a move.
Yeah. Weird, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
What do you
I
think,
think
Paul?
next
Wow.
year I think next year they're gonna close with a TikTok video. This is the natural evolution of things.
Are we giggling film snobs right now? Is that what's happening? Like they're gonna do YouTube. What's next? I got a video of my kids running around. We'll end with that.
I don't
I
know.
love it. No, I do think that's odd. Not big. I mean, Atlanta's amazing. Like, yay for that. Just yeah. It again, John. Like we were talking earlier, it's like what navigate. I mean, this is why we exist too. Film Festival Mastery, shameless plug. You know, it's like having to keep your finger on the pulse of this because COVID was such a disruptor that people are asking themselves, "What's happening? What am I doing?" And that's happening on the festival level too. How do you know South by clearly has decided that for them as a film quote film festival, um, bookmarking it with a television show is the move for them. What does that mean moving forward? You know,
Yeah,
and
and a big one too, right? It's not
right,
like a
right,
little discovery. It's something that people can see on TV, which is frankly where they watch it anyway, right? Because it's not
yeah,
a theatrical play. But you got festivals like Dances with Films who kind of pride themselves in not showing bigger studio stuff. So it is interesting to kind of see the shifting landscape here in the festival and market community.
yeah.
I totally didn't mean to act as the film snob saying that they're going to show a TikTok video at the end, because in fact I do believe a lot in TikTok, and I've been using it a lot myself and always questioning why. Why do I keep doing
He's a
this?
lot hipper than us, Justin.
Yeah, for the first time in my life, I feel like, oh, I think I'm turning 38 in like a month. 38, yeah.
Oh man, I
And so
shaved
I'm
off my gold hairs, but
yeah. TikTok for me has entered the realm of like I'm too old for this shit. And I need to get all over myself because it's like the fastest growing social broadcast platform like of all time or something. And I'm a damn fool for not being on it. But also I use terms like damn fool. So clearly I'm no longer of the Utes.
Well, I'll tell you quickly why
I worked on
TikTok.
that movie, by the way, Justin.
Yeah.
So there's some interesting things. First of all, TikTok has more usage than any other platform right now. They are downloaded the most, they are used the most, and the question is why? And the natural progression was, Twitter, text, Instagram, pictures, TikTok, videos. I don't know what goes beyond this.
Mm,
If it's the
interesting.
metaverse,
Yeah.
I hope not. But and then there was an interesting thing where people were contrasting. Well, Instagram decided to do video too, Instagram Reels, and so how are they different? What is different about those two platforms? And what I've learned is that Instagram wants you to, they give you a lot of filters and a lot of tools to make your videos look super produced or premium.
Mm,
It gives you a certain look, and
right.
that's what they promote in their algorithm, like videos that look very high quality. And TikTok instead went for interaction and speed. So they're really like, they want it to be more real, not so like planned out
Hmm.
interaction. So a lot of their videos feel like somebody just grabbed their phone and started talking.
Yeah.
That's the kind of motif that they're going with, and that's what I think people connect really well with. Is TikTok feels very real, like these people are like around you in your community talking to you, whereas Instagram feels like almost like you're watching a lot of ads and
Hmm.
watching a lot of like promotions.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that I like a lot about it. And TikTok is also very flexible, it feels like. Like they'll throw out new features just like out of nowhere. Like
Yeah.
other platforms, I think will wait to unleash this huge update of like,
with a big
this is the
campaign.
next, yeah, this is the next version. Now you can do this thing. And then TikTok's like, oh, let's just add this feature. Now it's available. Let's just
Yeah.
add, now you can do this. Okay, it's available. And people are like, well, like stuff just pops up that I can start doing. And people are being very creative with it. Um, just like finding different ways to interact with each other. It's really, I recommend it, Justin. I was such a resistor for a long
Yeah.
time.
I've still resisted. I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, but there's a reason. There's a reason this is blowing up.
Yeah. Uh and I hugely respect your take and opinion on it too, because I know that you can, that you feel me, bruh, right? Like why it would be hard for some people. But yeah, I'll hit you up offline too, of just like, unless you've got a quick answer for the listeners of like where does one start? And
Here's the scary thing about TikTok is it adapts to you really fast. So
okay,
once it starts to see like what you're swiping fast on and what you're watching more than once or watching most of, it will very quickly start to profile you of like, oh, you kind of like these things. And then if you don't like
mm,
it and you just like swipe away from it, it won't show you again.
Back to the
So
algorithm.
yeah, like I mean everyone says they have an algorithm, but I feel like this is one of the only ones where I actually feel like it's doing something.
oh, interesting.
Figure it
That's
out.
actually really interesting. Because yeah, Facebook's algorithm is not designed to show me content that will bring me joy. Facebook's content is designed to show me stuff that's going to get me agitated or or I'll say
Or to buy
engaged.
something.
Right, engaged or to buy something. And what's the quickest way to get somebody to engage or to buy something? Get them pissed off and then sell them the solution. I mean, that's, so I could see how the algorithm for TikTok, it sounds like, is more truly like, what do you like here? Here's some more of it. That's
It
which
also
I'm
sounds
into.
like it's more grounded in reality
Mhm.
images,
Yeah.
right? And people say that one of the reasons why documentary has really grown over the last few years, other than the fact that Netflix has been playing the shit out of them, and I think a lot of people didn't know what a documentary was, and now they do. So we have to thank them a little.
Mhm.
Is that I think when we're living in these uncertain times, being able to see something that's real and connecting back to something in our world, whether it's somebody on the street, somebody somewhere else, another country, it's something in your home, it's whatever it is, it's real. And I think
Yeah.
connecting documentary stories is 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 reality TV without trying to be eye candy. you know
Yeah.
My hope and hypothesis is that eventually, you know, even though TikTok videos look like somebody just filmed it in front of their face, like there is still some production and editing that is involved in some of these videos look really great. Like the things you can do on your phone now are pretty impressive. So, you know, do they eventually get tired of making TikTok videos and they graduate into actually joining the film world or the television media world? Like they have some skills at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of the name of the game, like build an audience, make content. It's not that different.
Nope. Not at all. Not at all.
the question though is how many of those people are on there to engage with their communities and have their own little kind of social media slash ego play versus wanting to be a creator and actually spending the time that it takes to create something and then move down that as a career path. Those are
I
two.
have to believe eventually you kind of mature out of that. Like when you're young, you're like, oh, I want all the followers. And then once you get all the followers, you realize that that doesn't necessarily fulfill you to just
Right.
have a
It
followers.
doesn't fill the follower shaped hole in your heart. Trying to shove it in, can't fill it in, y'all. It's not shaped like followers.
Well,
That's
I
good.
think
There's a good quote in there somewhere.
that is a great spot to end.
Sure.
We've gone over an hour. So Thanks everybody for joining us, whether you're watching it live or watching it later
Oh, I
on in your
forgot we went
life.
live. Oh my god, what have I done?
What have I done?
What
But
did I
hey, Paul,
say?
next time out, we're gonna actually save some time for Q&A, right? With some of our audience.
Yeah, we'll invite some
That the
people
plan?
next time. That's a good idea.
Cool.
I think we can, yeah, with this cool technology. Before we go, Paul, do you wanna give a shout out to any upcoming Filmocracy festivals
Oh
that are coming
yes.
up?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. Real quick, we've had a little bit of a lull during the winter season, but now we're picking back up. We've got the Paris International Film Festival run by Jenna Suru, good friend of mine, and then the Boston Sci-Fi Film Festival, which is
That's a
combined
big.
with a marathon.
That's a big
And
one.
yeah, we're
Yeah.
excited for that one. And we also have the Women's Voices Now Film Festival coming up in March, and they are actually one of our fellowship festivals. And we can, I think, expand on that next time because we're running out of time. But um, thanks everyone for watching. Join Filmocracy, join Film Festival Mastery, join iGEMS. We want you to join our community, and we'll be happy to talk to you in the next episode.
Yay.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Goodbye.